It started with a screech of metal and a sudden lurch that threw me against the stranger beside me. The train had broken down, and that's how I met Kenny. I should have known from that very first bump that my life was about to be derailed in ways I couldn't possibly imagine. Hi everyone, my name is Sarah, and I want to share a story with you that still makes my stomach churn with a mix of anger and regret. I made a mistake, a big one, and I paid dearly for it. I hope by sharing my experience, I can help someone else avoid the same pitfall. Please, take a moment to comment below and tell me where you're listening from. I'm curious to know who's out there and what kind of stories resonate with you. It was a Tuesday morning and I was on my way to work at the advertising agency downtown. Kenny, as I soon learned, was a struggling musician, guitar perpetually slung over his shoulder. We were packed in like sardines, and when the train ground to a halt between stations, a collective groan went through the car. Then, the lights flickered, died, and a wave of nervous laughter rippled around us. Kenny, ever the charmer, struck up a conversation. He had a way of making you feel like you were the only person in the world. He told me about his band, his dreams of making it big, and his passion for music. I, in turn, confessed my own humdrum existence of deadlines and spreadsheets. We discovered a shared love for old movies and a similar cynical view of the dating scene. Over the next few weeks, we kept running into each other on the train. It felt like fate, a cheesy meet-cute straight out of one of those old movies we both loved. He was funny, attentive, and seemed genuinely interested in what I had to say. Soon the train rides turned into coffee dates, and coffee dates turned into dinner dates. He was upfront about his financial struggles. Gigs were sporadic, and he was barely scraping by. One evening, over a surprisingly delicious plate of pasta at a hole-in-the-wall Italian place, he confessed that his apartment building was being sold and he had to move out within a month. "I don't know what I'm going to do, Sarah," he said, running a hand through his perpetually messy hair. "I can barely afford to eat, let alone find a new place." That's when I made my first mistake. I offered him my spare room. I had a 2-bedroom apartment in a decent neighborhood. It was more space than I needed, and honestly, the thought of having someone around, someone I genuinely enjoyed being with, was appealing. I framed it as a purely practical arrangement.
"You can stay until you get back on your feet, Kenny," I said, trying to sound casual. "Just pay me what you can in rent, and we'll split the utilities." He looked at me, his eyes shining with gratitude. "Sarah, you're a lifesaver," he said, reaching across the table to take my hand. "I don't know how I'll ever repay you." That should have been my first red flag. The first month went smoothly enough. Kenny paid a small amount towards the rent, claiming that he was waiting for a check from a gig. I didn't press him. I figured he'd catch up eventually. The second month, the check was still in the mail. The third month, his guitar needed repairs, an unexpected expense that wiped out his funds. His excuses grew more elaborate, more fantastical. He was always on the verge of a big break, a recording contract, a lucrative tour. He just needed a little more time, a little more leeway.
Meanwhile, I was slowly but surely bankrolling his life. I paid for groceries, cable, and even chipped in for his guitar strings. I told myself it was temporary, that he'd pay me back once he landed his big break. But the big break never came. My friend Emily noticed the change in me. I was working longer hours, stressed about money, and constantly making excuses for Kenny. "Sarah, you're being used," she said bluntly, one afternoon over coffee. "He's not your boyfriend. He's your freeloader. You're bankrolling his lifestyle." I bristled at her words, but deep down I knew she was right. The scales were starting to fall from my eyes. I started paying attention, really paying attention, to Kenny's behavior. He was always on his phone, whispering in corners, quickly hanging up when I entered the room.
He was vague about his whereabouts, claiming rehearsals and meetings that never seemed to materialize. One Saturday, while Kenny was supposedly at a recording session, I decided to do some cleaning. I ventured into his room, a space I usually avoided, and started sorting through the clutter. Underneath a pile of sheet music, I found a small, velvet box. My heart pounded in my chest as I opened it. Inside, nestled on a bed of satin, was a diamond ring. A beautiful, expensive diamond ring. My breath caught in my throat. I knew, instinctively, that the ring wasn't for me. A wave of nausea washed over me as I grabbed my phone and started scrolling through Kenny's social media. It didn't take long to find her. Daria. A stunning blonde with a megawatt smile and a profile filled with pictures of her and Kenny.
Pictures of them hiking, dining at fancy restaurants. And yes, pictures of her wearing that very same diamond ring. The caption on the engagement photo read, "Can't wait to marry the man of my dreams." The world tilted on its axis. I felt a cold rage building inside me. A rage fueled by betrayal, humiliation, and the realization that I had been played for a fool. He walked in a few hours later, whistling a jaunty tune, his guitar case slung over his shoulder. "Hey, babe," he said, leaning in to kiss me. I recoiled. "Don't you hey, babe, me, Kenny," I said, my voice trembling with anger. "Who is Daria?" He froze, his smile faltering. "Daria? I don't know anyone named Daria. Don't lie to me," I shouted, grabbing the velvet box from my pocket and throwing it at him. "Explain this," he stammered, his face turning a shade of red I'd never seen before.
Okay, it's complicated. Complicated? You're engaged to another woman. You've been living in my apartment, mooching off me, and using my money to fund your relationship with her. How much of my money have you spent on her, Kenny? He tried to deny it, to weasel his way out of it with his usual charm, but I wasn't having it. I laid out all the evidence, the ring, the pictures, the constant lies. Finally, he cracked. "Okay, fine, so I'm engaged," he said, his voice dripping with arrogance. "What's the big deal? Daria understands me. She supports my music. You were just a place to crash until I got back on my feet. Besides, you can afford it, Sarah. It's not like you're gonna be broke." His words were like a slap in the face. All the anger, all the resentment, all the hurt I had been suppressing exploded to the surface.
"Get out," I said, my voice barely a whisper. "Get out of my apartment. Get out of my life." He scoffed. "Fine," he said, grabbing his guitar case. "You'll regret this, Sarah. You'll see. You needed me more than I needed you." He slammed the door behind him, leaving me standing there, shaking with rage and disbelief. After he was gone, the dust began to settle, and I realized the full extent of the damage. Not just the emotional damage, but the financial damage as well. He had racked up thousands of dollars on my credit cards, promising to pay me back. He had drained my savings account bit by bit, with his constant requests for just a little more money. I was drowning in debt, and to make matters worse, I received a call from my boss the following week, informing me that the company was downsizing, and my position was being eliminated. Laid off, broke, and alone, Kenny had not only broken my heart, he had also broken my bank account and my spirit. I tried to find a new job, but the market was tight and my savings were dwindling fast. I started skipping meals, turning off the heat to save on utilities, and pawning anything of value I owned. It wasn't enough. A few weeks later, I received an eviction notice. I had nowhere to go. I was facing homelessness. Just when I thought things couldn't get any worse, a lifeline appeared. An old college friend, Rosalie, reached out to me. She had heard about my situation through the grapevine and offered me a room in her apartment. Rosalie was a godsend. She didn't judge me, didn't lecture me. She simply offered me a safe place to land and helped me get back on my feet. I found a part-time job at a coffee shop, and slowly, painstakingly, I started to rebuild my life. Months passed. I hadn't heard from Kenny. and honestly, I tried my best to forget he ever existed. I focused on my job, my friends, and my own healing. Then, one evening, as I was walking home from work, I saw him. He was standing on the corner, looking disheveled and desperate. He saw me too, and his eyes lit up with a pathetic hope. "Sarah," he said, his voice raspy. I need to talk to you." I hesitated for a moment, then reluctantly agreed. We went to a nearby park and sat on a bench. He launched into a rambling explanation about how Daria had left him, how his music career had stalled, and how he had realized what a mistake he had made. "I'm so sorry, Sarah," he said, his eyes filled with crocodile tears. "I was an idiot. You were the best thing that ever happened to me." He reached into his pocket and pulled out a small, tarnished ring. It was cheap, gaudy, and utterly devoid of sentiment. "I know it's not much," he said, "but I wanted to give you something, as a token of my numbers, affection." I stared at the ring, then at him. I felt nothing but contempt. "You're too late, Kenny," I said, standing up. "I've moved on. I'm not the same person you knew." I walked away, leaving him sitting on the bench, clutching the cheap ring. I thought that was the end of it. I was wrong. A few weeks later, I came home from work to find a gift bag sitting on my doorstep. There was no note, no return address. I cautiously opened it. Inside, I found a wad of cash, $1,500, and another, more familiar, velvet box. My heart pounded as I opened the box. Inside, nestled on the satin lining, was the diamond ring, the one he had given to Daria. I picked up my phone and called Kenny. He answered on the third ring.
"What is this, Kenny?" I demanded. "I just wanted to give it back to you," he said, his voice subdued. "Daria, she paid for it herself. She said it was a family heirloom. I just wanted you to have it." I hung up the phone, my mind reeling. He had used my money to buy a ring for another woman, a ring she had supposedly paid for herself, and now he was giving it back to me, along with a measly $1,500, as if that would somehow erase the pain and humiliation he had caused. I took the ring and the money and walked to the nearest pawn shop. I sold the ring for a fraction of what it was worth, and I used the money, along with the $1,500, to pay off some of my debts. It wasn't a lot, but it was a start. I learned a valuable lesson from Kenny, a lesson about trust, about red flags, and about the importance of protecting myself.
I realized that I couldn't let someone else's dreams and aspirations overshadow my own. I had to be strong, independent, and self-reliant. It took time, but I eventually got back on my feet. I found a better job, paid off my debts, and moved into my own apartment. I surrounded myself with supportive friends and family, and I learned to love and appreciate myself. Kenny, on the other hand, faded into obscurity. I heard through the grapevine that his music career never took off, and that he was still drifting from place to place, mooching off anyone who was willing to take him in. Sometimes I think about him. I wonder if he ever regrets what he did, if he ever realizes the extent of the damage he caused. But then I remember the strength I found within myself, the resilience I developed, and the lessons I learned. And I realize that, in a strange way, I am grateful for the experience.
It made me who I am today, a stronger, wiser, and more cautious woman. A woman who knows her worth, and who will never again allow someone to take advantage of her. And that's when I realized that sometimes the most painful experiences can be the most transformative. If you enjoyed this story, please subscribe to my channel for more stories about life, love, and the lessons we learn along the way.